All right, Jeff, I'm super stoked to bring you on because this is a topic that I know you and I have chatted on the side about. You're very open. I have different experiences, but this idea of mental health, and we're going to dive into
Mhm.
all of that today with you and get really nitty gritty. And first, I just want to say, like, before we dive into you and kind of your history, I mean, just from who you've worked with, clients or colleagues, right? Like, how often are you seeing mental health being an issue? Maybe it's not talked about with men that you're working with.
It's part of the reason I launched my new podcast series, ATG After Dark. I realized actually after talking to men, uh, they've never really had a man role model anything for them in terms of emotional conversations or even conversations like, hell, you could just sit down and talk about politics. They can't handle it. It's almost like this just shut down. It's very superficial. It's like, look how much money I make in the bank. Look at the car I drive. And it's like, well, that's nice, but my question is, why did 39,255 men take their life in 2022? That number is up 2.3% since 2021. In fact, women suicides actually jumped up in 2022 if you look at it from middle-aged. So I think it's this idea. I don't know if it's masculine anymore because majority of the men I talk to say they feel demasculinized by society today. That's a whole nother interesting conversation. So it's almost like they just don't want to talk, period, about anything because there's like this devaluation of man or being a man. So they've kind of been forced into silence, a lot of these guys. They say something, they're this, they're that, the other thing, they're this label. So they're just like, I guess I'm every label. I don't care. I'm meaningless or whatever. And that's, I think, kind of where it's starting to happen, in all honesty.
Well,
My
and
my take.
yeah, and of course we can chat with you have a personal tie to it, like quite literally you have gone through this, right? I just have personal connections to all of this, but you know, with the rates continuously increasing, right? Like I read recently that the suicide rate for men, it's like the highest it's been since 1941. Like that's wild,
Right.
right? But before we dive into all of that, you know, my goal for this podcast is that anyone, regardless of gender, any of that, like you feel seen and heard at the end of this and you feel confident enough to move forward because this isn't just about mental health. Entrepreneurs are far more likely to have anxiety, depression, all of these things, right? And so I don't think that even the strongest of person, I don't think that we understand what we're getting ourselves into truly when we dive into starting a business, right? Owning a gym,
Yeah.
managing other people's emotions and baggage, right? When we're trying to just handle ourselves. And so I hope this podcast gives clarity to anyone that's feeling that way. So, you know, I want to go into just you obviously are coming out with a book or you've written it, the pre-sales. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. I
Gonna
appreciate it.
link that in the bio for everybody, but or in the show notes rather. But the brittle to unbreakable, like I love that title. I feel like it's extremely applicable to you, makes total
Mhm.
sense. But can you just tell me a little bit about your story evolving into a bodybuilder when you thought that was never going to be possible?
Oh, that's such a long answer, but I'll give a
Sure.
little short to it. I was born with a brittle bone disease known as osteogenesis imperfecta. There's multiple types. Example, mine is say we both jump from 3 stairs distance down. I'm at a high likelihood that there's going to be a fracture. You have some, like my COO, Thera, her son has type 8. So when he sneezes, he could break his ribs. So couple months ago, she was going over a speed bump and it like cracked a vertebrae in his back. So you get him that fractal. So it's like a mix, right? The first 6 weeks I wasn't held by my mom. I didn't get that bond because my legs were broken when I was born, but the doctor used forceps to pull me out because I was born breached. It's 1980. So I'm screaming bloody murder. They changed my legs. I get diagnosed to 6 weeks out. By then, my legs had healed bowed. I grew up very normal. The one thing that's interesting about my OI, which I have type 4, so it's mild to moderate, um, you can't see it. It's why I would deem like a hidden disability. Most people don't know, like I struggle walking in public because the sidewalks are uneven and it throws off my gait very bad. But you would never know that look at me because I look quote unquote jacked with tattoos, right? So uh my legs healed, but parents raised me completely normal. I played baseball. I wasn't allowed to do like soccer or football. But I was like a rowdy little kid, you know. I was the one standing up for other kids, getting in trouble on the playground because someone pushed someone to the ground. I pushed that kid down. I was like shorter, but I was fast, so I didn't care. I decided to one day disobey my mom. Like my mom was so cool, she bought me a skateboard, but the skateboard wasn't allowed to leave the driveway. You know, and this is something I think that if I had been raised in today's age with the internet, I probably would never become a bodybuilder. Like my mom couldn't visually see it because there's only 25,000 of us in the US. That's how rare this disease is. It's not like a common one that you might know more of. This is pretty rare. So she didn't know anybody. Like this is Knoxville, Tennessee. So she's just like, just it's safe in the driveway. And up until then, the only fracture I had sustained outside of being born with broken legs was I was walking up my stairs when I was 5 and my leg broke. And I remember being 5 and kind of like, this is really weird. And like, I didn't like it. And then I broke my thumb playing catcher a week before I decided to take this dare with my skateboard and leave my driveway. And I left my driveway, went down this hill, and we were all doing our butts. And then someone did it standing up, and that kid challenged me. So I said, hell yeah. And I went down and I got scared and I jumped. For the longest time, I couldn't recall what I did. Like I had to work through an immense amount of honest counseling with myself to kind of come to grips with the fact that I caused my own devastation by nothing other than fear. So I come to, and I can't tell you how much pain I was in. I didn't really feel it until they moved me to the stretcher. But I can tell you how hot the asphalt was that June day in Tennessee. Like they just repaved the neighborhood. If there's asphalt within miles of me, I can smell it still to this day. It'll make me sick. It makes my body like I'll get really convulsed. Even my friends sometimes like, "What's wrong?" Oh, I'm driving on a guy's trip down to Florida. I was like, "Oh man, just like I just don't feel good," and I'm having that conversation. So after that, I had a surgery to rod my leg. It's pretty gruesome on the in between of that, but it came out 2.5 inches longer. Doctor said, "Hey, your other leg's bowed. I'm gonna break it and rod it, make it longer, and make them even." So my parents were like, "Okay, makes sense." So we do it. Well, then that leg ends up being an inch short, and they decide to pull the surgery known as the Elizabeth machine. Have you ever seen a halo device that someone wears around their head with the screws going through their skull? That was on my tibula fibula, except I had extra spokes through mine because my bones were fragile. So we're thinking it's one thing. And I remember my mom, I was like laid out from the surgery. I was kind of like coming out of the anesthetic because I was down for hours for that surgery. And the doctor pulled it back, and my mom was like, I heard her gasp. It was like the only time my mom ever really made too many reactions that I can recall. And she was like, "Oh my God, Jim, what have we done?" And I came to, they were trying to get me to walk on this thing. It weighed 17 pounds. I was all of like 30 some odd pounds. It didn't work. And then I found out 8 weeks in, and this is after I had to turn these dials every 6 hours to keep my leg in a constant state of fracture. So I didn't really sleep. No one really talked to me about that pain constantly was not a normal thing. So I had a very sick relationship with pain at a very young age. It cost me a lot of things. They chased me into my 30s. So he was like, "Hey, this you're behind. I had these spokes." And I had gone in because I had to have the checkup, but every week the skin would grow up the spokes, and my mom and I would have to take a scalpel and like clean off the skin off the spokes and keep the wounds clean and the infections down. I was on antibiotics all the time. You could probably, the only thing I didn't get was pain pills because my mom didn't believe in them. She probably did me a great justice in hindsight. In hindsight, so I give my mom a lot of praise there. That was courageous for her to do in a time where it was popular. So the doctor was like, "All right, we're gonna do a radical stretch and turn." And my mom and I looked at each other, and it was kind of like, "Well, shit, we know something has to happen." And like the moment he started turning the dials, I was like, something's not right. And I started communicating. It was shh, shh, shh. So their response was someone just kind of laid down on me and restrained me. And so there was 13 clicks. And by then I felt like someone was taking a washcloth and just twisting it in my leg. And then he had to get the wrench to turn the dials. And the moment he did, I started squirming. And I was like, no, no, I couldn't get away. I couldn't do it. And on the 13th click, it popped. And it was the last time I pretty much shed a tear. It was the last time, I mean, it literally sounded like lightning cracking the sky. My mom's reaction was to put her hand on my mouth because of my scream. Like I sucked so much air in and let it out. And it was just a menacing scene in hindsight. And that kind of broke me. And that night when I went home, I went to sleep. Like what I say was a friend sat down on the bench with me, and that friend was suicide. Like that was my consolation for what I went through was this is so much suffering. Like what gives? Like why am I gonna keep going? And I'm coming out of the surgery. I go through physical therapy. Um, my very first step, the leg breaks. So I have to go back for another surgery. And at that point, my mentality changed because I had physical therapist who really pushed me mentally to suck it up. So I then went with the idea of pain equals progress. It's no longer suffering, but suffering through pain gives you progress. And so no one tells me this is abnormal. By then, my mom's pretty checked out. Rightfully so. She had been through a lot. My dad pretty much decided not to be a dad too. So Donna held a lot down for the three of us. Um, End up going through that. Um, I would find myself as I'm doing these various surgeries along the way, cutting myself from my upper thighs. If I didn't feel pain, I would slam my hand in a door, or I'd hit myself. If I didn't feel pain, I didn't feel alive. Like I literally thought I was dead or some weird. It was very weird to me. Ended up walking into high school my freshman year, got bullied for getting called cripple. The kids broke in my locker one day and they wrote on scotch tape short and cripple. And I ended up going to the gym. My hairline fractured my pelvis working out too much because my mom was a little bit of a forward thinker. She got me into working out because she was like, hey, he's going to be in this wheelchair probably or crutches because they didn't think I'd ever really walk without some aid. They thought I was too fragile. So she got the physical therapist like teach me upper body stuff so I could get myself in and out of hospital beds and everything. So one day after lunch, where me and this kid were jaw jacking for the whole year, he called me cripple, and I don't know what came over. I jumped up and I just started beating his face in at the board in front of everybody. He got a lick or two in, and then it was the first time I ever looked at another man, and I could tell he felt genuinely sorry and that I had hurt another man. And I felt good about it because I stood up for myself because I had been bullied and so forth. So it was this very conflicting moment in my life. And I thought my mom was going to kill me. So she comes, she's wearing these big, like Liz Taylor sunglasses, like they just cover her whole face, her Dooney and Burke purse and toe.
Oh, the Dooney and Burke. Okay.
Yeah, she was style. So, my mom was a bad bitch back in the day. So I mean,
Nice.
like, I look at her, I was like, she was boss well before she met my dad. But and then we go home, and so she takes me to lunch. I'm like, she's like, what? She's real calm, and I'm like, wow, what's going on, mom? Like I really thought I was gay ass. Yeah, because I'm in a Catholic school, raised Irish Catholic, red Republican, the whole. I thought I was getting beat, so I was like, something's breaking tonight. And she's like, all right, well, just I got 3 days suspension. She's like, just do what they ask you to do, and okay. I'm like, well, you still gonna take me to the gym? And she's like, yeah, you go hang out with your friends, do whatever. She's like, I'll take you home and go see him. I'm thinking like, oh, this is amazing. She had to stop at a Kroger's. I've been playing guitar since I was 9. If I didn't become a health and fitness coach, I would be a fat, disgusting, bald death metal guitarist in some band
Nice.
touring in a van, puking on myself nightly. That would probably be me. So I'm walking down the aisle to go get to the guitar magazines. For a reason, I happened to look up beforehand and I saw this jack dude on the cover said Matt Flex. And it was the first time I ever saw someone that big. And my mind immediately went to, well, hell, if I could get that big, no one will mess with me. Off to the races I went. And that was, I mean, that I've not stopped since 15. I'm
Okay.
43. I'll be 44 in September.
Okay.
I've had my fair share of surge of injuries and so forth, but that's pretty much how I found it. I believe it was fate. I think all in life we are given signs, and it's up to us if we, you kind of get to forks in the roads all the time, and you just don't pick it down. And for whatever reason, the fork in the road that day was I looked before the guitar magazine section, and after that, I kind of put my guitar up. I still play, but got on to bodybuilding, and I mean, it's given me so much fruitfulness. I started at 95 pounds. So I mean, I know to go but up.
So how old were you when you first competed, like first show?
Oh, I'm gonna bum out every person listening to this. I waited 10 years. I did not step on stage till I was 25, almost 26. Took me that long before I felt confident. And I
Totally.
really think it went to my advantage because like I had really learned to appreciate like what I had built by then, and that I believed I could go up there and actually be competitive. See, that's one thing I loved about baseball was kids couldn't see I had this hidden disability. They couldn't tell that I was different. I could keep up with them. I could hit the ball equally as hard as they. I mean, they were all. I was equal. I was usually one of the first kids picked every year. I mean, I was good at it. My dad played, so I mean, it was fine to me. In bodybuilding, it was the first time I competed that I went, holy, I got fifth out of like 18 people. I weighed 20 pounds less than the nearest guy. And it was the first time I ever felt like I wasn't, that no one looked at me and went, ew, I didn't feel judged. Because when I was going through everything as a kid, I just wanted to be damn normal again. I want no one to look at me, no one to pay attention to me. Like I've been bullied by society on both sides of it. Skinny, fragile, weak, sick looking, ew, what's wrong with him looks to built, oh, he's some meathead roid user. So I've seen both sides of the spectrum, oddly enough. And you
Yeah.
wouldn't even think that about me. But it took me 10 years before I did it.
That to me makes sense though. Like I don't know, maybe
Yeah.
someone listening is like, oh my God, it wasn't the next year. Like I don't know, that makes sense. I
You
think
see that though more and more.
yeah. Well, especially now. I mean, like just
Yeah,
the way that people look on stage now versus even, 5 years ago is different too. So it's like it
true.
just takes longer. But in terms of like you starting your like the online coaching thing or just training people, right? Like what was the what was the timeline to that? So like you obviously had this thought in your head, okay, I'm going to be a bodybuilder. Cool, got it. I'm going to do
Mhm.
that. So when did you put two and two together to start the business?
So for me, came out of high school, asked to go work at GNC or a gym. My mom and dad said, no, you go to college. I went to college. I was pretty much on the dean's bad list by the second semester, and didn't really go back. I ended up getting a degree later, but that was with all my high school at the University of Phoenix. At 22, I took a job with the Department of Homeland Security. 9/11 really impacted me. I remember I was sitting at TV that day when that happened, and I decided to apply for them. I ended up getting hired. I spent the first 2 years from 2002 to 2004 traveling, making sure that all the congressional mandates according to the ATSA of 2001 signed in the Congressional Act were met. So meaning I went to every airport and trained people up, and then I would deploy to another one. It was really easy to me because I lived a routine where other people struggled. So I would just be like, what's my shift? Okay, I'd make my hours and then go my 24 hours later, I was fine. I moved to Nashville. The woman I was dating, who's the mom to my oldest son, decided to move here. I had a job here, took a home airport position. Within a year, I hated it because I didn't like all the local politics, which is part of the reason government's accessible. And I was being harassed by a guy who was running a training director outfit out of a Gold's Gym I worked out of, who was like, dude, like I see that your workout party is really changing. And he asked me to be a trainer. I said, man, all you guys do is stretch chicks and use clipboards and do dumb stuff. I don't want to do that. It doesn't even work.
The
Like, because
next
I
time
knew it didn't work.
next time anyone asks me to describe what a trainer does, I'm like flipboards and stretch chicks, like
Yeah.
obviously.
That's what you would see. Like the gyms
No,
grow
you're
up. So I look,
so right.
I know.
Even now, if you walk into an LA Fitness, that is literally what you see. Like
I know.
I keep a membership just because I travel and I really hate going there. But like you see the clipboards, man, with like the 20-year-old kid who's like stretching a chick.
Yeah. And I'm just like, yeah. But he was like, all right, I'm telling you it's different. So I was like, finally one day I looked at Jared's mom and was like, I can't do it anymore. I was working like 50-hour weeks at Homeland Security. I've always been a dog in the sense I like to work a lot. Like I hide my pain through work. It's great. It allows you to do that when you're depressed. Um, but she's like, well, hell, go try it. And I did. And I remember my first ever client was this woman. She gave me this piece of lingerie and she pulled it out and she goes, I want to be able to wear this in 3 months on my 10-year anniversary of my husband. I'm like, okay, that's cool. A couple
I don't
months
know where
later,
you were going with that
yeah,
story.
I know it could have gone really weird in today's world. But she was like, came running in a couple months later and picked me up. I'm not a small guy at this point, and she's like, "We did it. I look amazing." And I was like, "Oh, hey!" And I was like, it was that night driving home. I was like, man, maybe I should do this. So lucky for me, a few months later, I was sitting down with the federal security director, who was a former retired lieutenant colonel in the Army. And I asked him why I didn't get that promotion. He says, because everyone with the military gets 5 points. So even if you score 100, if they score 96, they get a 101. They're going to beat you every time. So what am I looking at? He goes, 5 to 10 years. And I knew there were a lot of stupid idiots who was double connotation. I knew there was a lot of ill-equipped people who were going to be above me, who were going to tell me what to do in my team. And it was just going to be a nightmare. Like they're already going out of their way.
You're like, I'm starting a business.
And then he was like, I really think you're good at this, man. He goes, I see how you talk to people. I see how you take care of your team, talk to them about water, just simple stuff like that. He's like, you should go do that. So the next day I drive in, I'm sitting next to my partner, Vince. I'm like, I'm out. He's like, what do you mean you're out? I'm like, I'm out. I'm like, I'm leaving. I'm going to go part-time, full-time, my training gig. And within a month, I had an AM and a PM book full. I did in person for 5.5 years at a corporate level. It took me that long before I felt comfortable that I understood the gym business top to bottom. Most trainers don't understand gym businesses. Therefore, I don't think they understand how to actually get clients. People are looking at the pain points that most gyms actually solve, which means if you can understand how gym runs from the consumer point all the way through in the client retention, you could usually do better as a trainer. And I learned a lot. I learned about why you want 20% PIF and you should set up a model of draft every month potentially, and all these different things I got to see that I would never have known. There's no business classes, on this. Become a trader. It's usually people who look good, who are passionate about it, who help other people get into
And
it.
even
And
the
that's
people
usually how it
that
falls.
have business degrees, like no knock if you have one and you're listening, but I mean,
Sure.
it's the practical application, right? Like, and as somebody who went to school for broadcast journalism, I mean, nothing matters unless I'm on TV getting the skill, right? So it's like,
100.
totally understand that. And for you, being immersed in that gym setting, obviously, I mean, you have a gym now, obviously a successful gym, and we will dive into that too. So okay, as of now, you've been doing online coaching for what, 15, 20?
No, that's the funny point.
Really?
I didn't start online coaching until 2019 when I started the Excellence Cartel. The
Really?
only online coaching I ever did was for clients who referred me family or friends. And I would usually pick up the phone and talk to them every Friday. And I'd be like, okay. And I'd have my email pulled up. I'd be like, all right, well, this is stuff I want to change based on what I'm doing. Quick 5-10 minute phone call on Friday. And that's how I did my online business. And then once I launched the Excellence Cartel, I started getting more people interested in working with me.
Interesting. All
Yeah.
right.
I
That's
went about it
wild.
a longer pathway. I argue it made me a better online coach with Loom because I had so many years developing my coaching personality. Because let's be honest, if you want to succeed, you got to think about this as like the WWE universe. What personality do you want to be when you're present? I like to sound more like Stone Cold Steve Austin with my voice and impose it upon people across the gym. And it helps me. But by having the conversations daily that you do with people over and over and over, I've learned how to splice down stress to minimal sentences where a person's like, oh my God, that makes so much sense why I need sleep. Yes. You know what I mean? Like, and it helps you be a better coach. Like people shy away from in person. And I argue, even if you don't want in-person people, when you're in the gym, you should be talking to people. Even if you're training, you don't like that. Go once a week, act like you're there training, just talk to people. You'll learn so much about what people want in a gym and what they want or don't want for trainers. It's really interesting.
Well, just in general, right? Like, and some people that are starting businesses are having trouble because they're introverted, right? Like, you have to talk to people, right? It's
Yeah.
not, it doesn't have to be awkward, but you don't know what your ideal client wants unless you've talked to them or unless it truly is a reflection of where you've been, right? Like, it just depends on who you're working with. So my question for you is your first, just looking at what you've done, right? Gym, book, business, online, all of that. You've obviously been extremely successful. And I know the mental health challenges have probably presented themselves multiple times. So I'm wondering how you've navigated depression while being somebody that's filling up others' cups, right? Like obviously when yours is not all the way full, you're having to fill others, right? And so I'm just curious how you've navigated that while being somebody that people look up to.
I think what I said to you earlier, I didn't know there was anything wrong with the way I looked at life, like pain is purpose. So if you were in a relationship with me, Taylor, you were going through some pain too, honey. That was just how it was going to happen. And when it came to professional, though, all on my path, I really haven't burned it to the ground in any degree. Maybe got a little hot, but overall, I was able to really just kind of hone in. And I don't know if I necessarily, per se, maybe filled others' cups. I think because how I am just so matter of fact with people. And when I tell them my story, and I'm like, yeah, if I did this, you can too. Like, you know what I mean? That people just, it's almost like it's a brutal honesty that people needed to hear rather than the rah rah go get yourself. Because I've never been. My team will tell you, if you want like a rah rah player coach, I'm not the guy. But if you want a Nick Saban, I'm your man. Like, you know.
So I don't know if this is, I'm going to say something that could be controversial, right? And again, this
Let's
could
hit
be
it.
on my part, but let me know your thoughts. I think that so many people that were born after like 1990, right? Especially after 1995, everyone is so quick to say they have depression, anxiety. We are so quick to label ourselves and that becomes our identity. Why does everyone have ADHD today? Like not everyone has ADHD, right? Some people actually do, of course, but everyone is so quick to label any problem with just like a bracket and then, oh, I have depression. It just is how it is. I have anxiety. That is how it is, right? And we're so quick to do that. Whereas I don't even know, maybe you have, but I think because of when you kind of went through that, like you said, you were just kind of, I have to deal with this. Like I have to deal with it and move on and get through that. I don't know if that changed in like, people that are in their 20s and 30s now, but what are your thoughts on just like depression and how it's kind of evolved with different, I guess like age brackets?
You know, I had this discussion with a buddy of mine not long ago, and I said, life I caught on at an early age was a lot of suffering, and you could kind of figure out what you wanted to make of it. I can be honest, anybody, even my wife knows this. I look her in the face and I'm like, I don't really find enjoyment out of life. I look at life as more of a series of things I just must complete while I'm here. And I think that that to me is where you could say, oh, I'm depressed. And I'm kind of like, hmm, I remember what it was like when I was depressed. Depressed was I had a negative self-talk going dialogue with myself going at all times that it kept me down. There was no, I didn't give a shit. I didn't think many good things about myself. I didn't even think I was a good man for a long time. Um, and that kept me down. And then I had the suicide thoughts as the underlying thing, just because of the amount of pain I'm in daily, all sorts of stuff. It's pretty hard to kind of talk that back off the cliff, right? But I think what kind of happened to me was I really had a choice, and it was like, look, man, and I tried the journaling, I did the therapies. I will tell you this, if you're interested in counseling, do it and date around. Find you a counselor that can sit with your heart as shit, and you'll be able to know. I would have them scoot chairs, move feet until I finally found one person who was dead as dead could be when I said what I said to him. And so I was like, okay, this is probably the guy for me. And I did it. And I did everything I was supposed to do. And then it still didn't leave me in my 30s. My kids touched me. I didn't like it. It felt weird. It felt abnormal to me. I didn't like the things I stood down daily. So I was reading a book and I found about psychedelics. And that for me was the key to opening up problems or fixing or solving problems that I couldn't solve because I looked at everything as a problem I couldn't solve. And I think that's the difference to summarize this. You have a generation of people that before that looked at things as problems to solve. And now you got to look at a generation of things that people go, oh, that's just is what it is, accept it or piss off. And people are so quick to give up on others and things and themselves in today's world, I think, than maybe before.
And like I said, I mean, I know this might be a blanket statement again from coming from somebody who does not have depression. I've never had suicidal thoughts or any of that, but I have had so many friends and loved ones that have, right? And for me, I've noticed that it's really location specific. Like none of my friends in the Texas area like have depression. Whereas when I lived in Cleveland, every single person was on medication, right? And I think that that's interesting. I mean, I know people talk about seasonal depression, and being from Texas, no one talked about that, right? I didn't experience that. And moving there, I personally didn't experience it, but I know there were certain months of the year where I didn't see my friends. Like they were just in their holes hermiting. And I was like, okay, see you next month. Like, here we go. Which ultimately led to me just moving because I needed to kind of remove myself from the heaviness that was there. But I do think now there's just, and I love that mental health is on the forefront of topics and discussions. But what I don't love is the trend that every time I meet someone new, it seems like they're categorizing themselves as having anxiety, having depression, having these things, right? And so that's why I wanted your take on that, because I noticed that even working with coaches, them helping them scale their businesses, right? Oh, I'm having a depression flare up, this and that. And all of that, of course, we have to be mindful. And of course, we have to I take that extremely seriously. I just know that I hear that so often now because I think it's so talked about, and certain Instagram accounts are popping up and all of that. And I think it's really easy to say, oh, let me look at this checklist. Yeah, that sounds like me. I think I do have depression, right? Versus maybe it is just something to work through and go to therapy and talk it out versus getting a pill slapped on something or whatnot.
I think this is where the conversation like I brought up at the end of my book comes into play about the openness about psychedelics. I think too many people are running to them for simple problems.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's when there's true trauma. Like, here's the thing. For years, I didn't sleep. For years, when I did sleep, I didn't like what I dreamed about. And that kept me up. That kept me in that cycle. There are situations like that I think that is you're actually depressed. But here's the deal. You wake up some days, there's some days I don't want to do shit. I don't even want to like breathe air, but I still get up and do it. Do you know what I mean? Because here's the thing I kind of started figuring out with my depression. All right, Jeff, let's just figure this. Let's just say that you're really depressed today. And I remember I would lay in my bed and have this conversation because I get up every day at 3:30. This would start at like 3:22 in the morning. I'd be like, but on the off chance that some hot chick were to like want to marry you or millions of dollars were to fall in your lap, or what if you missed some guy doing something really crazy in the middle of the intersection of the gym road, like the other day, a clown juggling and he's almost got for tips? What if I miss this? I would literally talk myself out of bed about what I would miss about my day if I stayed in my bed, because I was able to rationalize what I would do in the bed. I'm just gonna lay here, I'm gonna nap, it's gonna make me more tired, it's gonna make me more sad and all that. And I would just figure out what my triggers were. If you're a business owner and people are pissing you off and you're depressed because nothing's going right, put your phone up for a few hours. Go get creative, go do some other stuff. A lot of it is just having that conversation with yourself, and you got to be a big boy and a big girl about it. Like, no one's coming to save you. Nobody cares. I hate to say it like that. And that was one big thing I put together when I with this depression, this anxiety talk with people. I hate to say it, but everybody says they care, but I'll shoot everybody straight. I know some of my close friends that listen to this. Ain't none of them texting me all the time to see how I'm doing mentally. And I'm not doing the same thing. And it's only when we make sad posts on social media. It's almost like we went to and I talked about in my book too. It's almost like you get rewarded for how more screwed up of a victim you are than the next person. Like, well, my trauma is worse than yours. I'm like, look, man, like that's real interesting because it's a wild ride out there for everybody. You know what I mean? And I know there are certain traumas I wouldn't want. I would take mine hands down anyway, again, all over again, avoid the others. So I feel like we as a society go for labels now, and we don't just say, hey, that label's great, but you still gotta like do the work.
I agree. And that's kind of what my whole point of bringing this up is not to discredit or discount or any of those things. And I think that disclaimer is hopefully not needed if you're listening to this podcast. But ultimately, I just noticed that people are very quick to throw a label on something.
Yeah.
Doctors are very quick to prescribe medications.
Yes, they are.
I think it's a problem in my opinion. And if somebody is listening to this, right, and they, male, female, doesn't matter. If somebody's really struggling to kind of balance how they're feeling mentally, the hard times in business, right? Like, what advice would you give them aside from, seeking like therapy and whatnot? Like, is there anything that's helped you? I know you mentioned talking to yourself in the morning to get out of bed? Is there anything else that you've done on a weekly basis or something, or maybe wellness checks with yourself?
I journal. I think that journaling is a good key. And I tell people, even if you don't have it, because I'm like, what do I write about? I'm like, what are you feeling? And they're like, sad. I'm like, write some lyrics from a song that evoke that emotion, then just start journaling. Like you, because what it takes to kind of get into a state, like I explained, like, you just gotta kind of give yourself a little flow. The other thing is, I actually went out and built a brotherhood. I got a group of guys. We get together every quarter, all small business entrepreneurs to managers of country artists to everything in between. We get together. This next one, we're going to a gun range. We're all going through a tactical class together. The one before we did bar golf. So we have a guys trip that we do. I invested in that. And those are people that I could have honest conversations with that were in other areas of business to be like, yeah, well, that happens. And here's some solutions. And this kind of what you do. And the conversation ends there because they know that yesterday ended last night. And you just got to keep moving forward. And that's kind of some of the stuff I did. I really chose to level up the introspection I was willing to go with myself. Like I found out probably in the last 90 days of 2023 that I didn't like running an online coaching business and decided to, when everything kind of went down, kill it. I was like, I don't want to rebuild this. It's not my passion. And I don't think I would have gotten that without having that brotherhood and some journaling. And I think on the days that you don't want it, that's the days where you have to ask yourself if you really want what you really want.
Yeah.
Because 80% of businesses don't make it after 5 years. Odds are against you from the jump. So you're going to have a lot of sad days. And guess what? Those sad days that you take off work are days that people who could deal with their sadness get ahead of you.
That is such a true statement. It's business is really hard, and I know we say this
Brutal.
and we talk about it, but again, I don't think that anyone is prepared. I wasn't prepared, right? And every time, because bad days, I don't want to say that they happen more than good days necessarily, but in my opinion, there's the really good days, there's the everything's fine days, and then there's the this fucking sucks days. And they really are pretty balanced in like the way I run my business, right? If I have a really
Right.
good day, I'm like really cherishing that, right? If I'm like, damn, things are cooking, hell yeah. But usually it's like you're fixing problems, right? And the bigger you climb, the more it's like people problems, like team members and this and that, and managing, and it just changes as you grow. But I work with coaches where one client had a failed payment and it totally throws off their week, and I'm like, we've got to work on this, right? Like we've got to nip this shit in the butt, because if a payment failing throws off your game for 7 days, we're not going to be able to grow.
Shit, they ain't gonna be able to make it in any business. They're better off going working as a worker bee somewhere.
Right.
And yeah, but I'm going to ask you a question because that brings up immediately popped in my head.
Mhm.
I listened to this interview with Ed Milet and Andy Frisell. They were talking about, would you do the entrepreneurial journey again, knowing what you know now? Like, would you do it again? Because I had the conversations with my friends. I was like, I don't know if I'd do it again. I don't
100%.
know if I would have stayed. I would have stayed safe and been like, sure, just let other people call the shots, lose all the sleep and everything else, be able to shut my phone off, not worry about it for a few days. You know what I mean? Like,
I would 100% do it again. And I say that because I
oh,
feel like I'm still, for as much growth as we've had my business turns 5 this year.
yeah.
And for as much,
Congrats, by the way.
thank you. For as much growth as we've had, I'm finally at a place now where I'm like, okay, I can see, like in my head, I can finally see what like doubling or tripling the impact looks like. Like it's foggy, but like I can see it, right? Whereas it's really cool how things are coming together. But I was really open recently about how this year has been a complete grind, and it's only February 19th. We're recording this. Like it just everything that I'm doing this year is new. It is uncomfortable, different tactics. I'm throwing a lot of money at shit. You know what I mean?
Me
Probably
too. I love it.
intentional plateaus in order to get where I want to. And I think that's what business owners don't understand either, is like every time you are trying to really make a quantum leap, right? Like there's got to be some intentional plateaus or a small decline to like really grow. And that's where people really, fuck up. And now you're not going to have intentional plateaus under six figures, right? Like you should be pretty much stacking on a recurring basis. If it's like crazy up and down roller coaster, we've got to fix some shit. But, if you're taking a business from, let's say, I don't know, six figures to seven figures, like there's going to be some intentional, we've got to play the long game. We've got to intentionally slow down to speed up. That's what I always tell my clients. And so this year, after having a lot of momentum for year after year, this is definitely one of those years that I would say we're slowing down. But here's what I wouldn't want to do again. And I mean, I've been open about this and I've told you about it. I don't know if you know the timeline, but whenever my boyfriend, passed away due to suicide, that was 8 weeks into my business, right?
Yeah,
And
good story.
so I don't want to go through that again. Like I would do anything to avoid that. But when it comes to just starting a business again, absolutely. Because there's been some shit that I really don't want to relive, like in terms of just some crazy stories that one day I feel like I should write a book about. But like things not on a podcast, things that are definitely outside of podcast.
Or when I do the first female ever After Dark series, you could come on. It would just like the
I'm ready.
skeletons come
It's gonna
out.
be, yeah, it's gonna be, yeah, some litigious stuff in there, but it's like there's definitely things and that I would not want to relive. But I will say this crazy ride that is entrepreneurship, even though it is the hardest thing that you will ever do in your life, there is absolutely nothing that has made me like more proud of what I'm capable of. And I've always been that like crazy type A person, whatever, but I never, like, you don't realize what you're capable of until you push yourself like this, at least in my opinion.
True.
Like, I think business is so wild. Like, to think that, all right, I built a seven-figure business from my fingertips on my phone. All right, cool. Like, what next? You know what I mean? Like that's oversimplified, of course, but I'm just saying people really, oh God, this is so hard. It's like, look, if you really want that freedom and that flexibility and all of that, like you're going to have to do what 99% of people are not willing to do. And if you don't want to, that's okay. That's totally okay because we need employees. We need people to just go to work and kick ass, right? Like that's okay. I need people to work under me. And so I also think it's really important for entrepreneurs to realize like, it's okay to try and not want to do it anymore. Like,
Yeah.
don't hang on for ego. Like, it's totally cool to test it out because I mean, I get people all the time that join, not all the time, but people that join, Fitness Coach Academy, and that's for, beginner coaches, right? And it's totally, I see it happen where a year goes in, they're like, you know what? Honestly, thank you. This was helpful, but it made me realize it's just not for me. And that's my job. Like, I don't want you, I want you to realize if entrepreneurship is for you or is not for you early on. So you're not wasting years and years thinking, I hate this, I hate this, I hate this. Because in my opinion, like, and I'll ask you this now because it's on my list to just, ask you, but what would you say is the best characteristic for an entrepreneur? Like of successful entrepreneurs, what is the like number one characteristic they should have?
I think most people misidentify and they're actually an entrepreneur. I think Amazon has actually shown that to be a true thing. A lot of people who get their own divisions and go build them up for this monster thing. But for characteristics of an entrepreneur, I think you have to be willing, and I don't know, maybe I'm a little wrong here. A lot of those successful ones I've run into usually are very consistent, their routine, very consistent in certain things. But the one thing that I think they have above anyone else is a little bit of edge to them. Like, no matter what's going on with them, they're okay with you kicking them in the face. They'll just turn in, look, be like, that's nice. Still got to go forward. I still got to do that tomorrow because I still got something to do tomorrow. Okay. And you literally, like, I really think there's almost like this edge to it. It's almost like, how much punishment can I take and still not give enough shits that I have to keep going forward in this one thing? That nothing will derail you. I really think that that's what it comes down to. I don't think it's the people who sleep more, sleep less, the people who do that, what's the bullshit that everybody does? Speaking into existence. Like, I'm like, yeah, you speak into existence, but you do like have to do the work behind what you're speaking into
Manifesting. Yeah. Yeah.
existence. Yeah, and all that.
Yeah.
So no, that's my thought. I think you have to have a little chip on your shoulder.
I like that. I mean, I always say grit and stuff, but to me, it kind of goes hand in hand with what you're saying, but a little bit
Yeah.
different. It's like I've always said curiosity, just because literally every single day there is a problem you're solving, whether it's a client problem, a systems problem, a HR, whatever. Like there's always a problem that you're solving, and you have to get really freaking curious on how to solve those problems, because if I mean, otherwise I would be like, oh, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do, right? And I think that we're so quick to just giving up. But I agree with you, because I was talking to one of my friends the other day, and I was like, nothing is like hard necessarily about this year. It just feels really inconvenient. Like everything is new, and there's just like constant things I'm like fixing. And I'm like, this is just like scaling a business. Like that's just where we're at. It's one of those grind seasons. Like I know where I want to go. I'm making calculated guesses and moves, but I fucking know what I'm doing, right? Like I've never gotten where I want to go. So it's like I'm doing everything in a way that I think makes sense, but it's challenging. And so I'm laughing because we've just had so many little hiccups, and I'm like, all right, like what next? What next? What next? And it's like, I don't have time to sit on my couch and cry about it. Like you just keep moving, right? And I think the reason that we keep growing is because we do keep moving, like you said, because there's no successful entrepreneur that's going to be down for the count for, 48 hours because something bad happened. Like they're on to the next thing. They're on to the next problem to solve. So I'm with you on that.
I agree. I think, one thing I could say about my entrepreneur journey, I have rarely enjoyed any wins, and I have rarely let any losses get to me. And I think that that's kind of like the balance you need to keep. I think that sometimes everyone's so quick to always celebrate. And I'm like, hey, moment you celebrate, you're going to get kicked in the face tomorrow if it's a real entrepreneur journey. If you're really, really trying, really trying down that journey, you should celebrate a victory. And then the next day, it's like Tim Grover said, winning. Loves you real good that night, and then the next day it's like, yeah, what have you done for me next? You
And
know what
I
I mean? It's real
swear,
true.
yeah, I swear every time something like bad happens, like it comes in threes. Like I swear that's a real thing.
Yeah,
I don't know what it
100%.
is, but like it's like anytime something happens, I'm like, all right, two more things, two more things. What's it gonna be? Like I'm anticipating it. You can handle it, Taylor. You've got the bandwidth. But no, I mean, I that's so funny. So I want to just ask you really quickly about building a gym. I know we could probably do a
Sure.
whole other podcast on this, but there are a few clients I've worked with, people listening that may think they want to build a gym. And here's what I want to touch on. I've worked with clients, it's been a long time actually, where they hire me for business coaching, and then within like a month, they're like, hey, I'm going to buy this gym and scale it up, when they're not even like making, 10K months yet. And I'm like, I don't think that's a great idea. So I want you to give me like, how much money should you have to invest in a gym? What should you have on hand aside from loans and this and that? Like, you know what I mean? If you're trying to balance the two, like if you want to scale an online business and then own a gym one day or buy a gym or whatever, what does that look like? The hours required from really starting fresh, assuming you're getting a building and maybe there's some equipment already in it. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So that was like my deal. My business partner and I, one day the owner was like, hey, I'm closing next month. We're like, excuse me? And so we went in it. The rent was like 2,500. We were already paying him 1,800 a month between us and rent. So like, well, that's fine. He ended up passing away in 2018, my old business partner. But that's how it really started. It was 10,000 bucks from each of us, and we decided to split the rent. We had some crappy equipment in there, but I don't think if you're gonna get a gym today, you can do it without going full all tilt into in-person training. Your online business is cute. Let that be a subsidiary that you can actually maybe take your family on vacations, take yourself on vacation, whatever you want. But to build an absolute monster of a gym, you have to make a decision. You want to be a gym manager, or do you want to be the head coach? I chose to be the head coach, and I chose to identify someone who could be the integrator, aka the gym manager. And now she is after being with me since 2017, she now has been gifted 25% stock in the company and holds title as COO because she worked her way through it. I use Strength Finder to identify our zones of strength, and I turned out to be a 3 in the visionary with 0 integration, and she was 3 integration with 0 in the visionary.
It's perfect.
So exactly, Gino, I can't remember his last name. It's a really good book called Rocket Fuel.
I was gonna say Rocket Fuel. Yes,
yeah, it talks
so
about
good.
this, and you're going to have that if you're going to run a gym. I chose to live on my training income and allow the income from the gym to build the gym. So I have 8,000 square feet with at least 750,000 of equipment from hammer strength to arsenal. You saw it. Everything's metal plates, all the barbells. bells, whistles, completely debt free. It's been debt free the entire 9 years of ownership come April. And I think that was strictly just because I identified someone who could run the gym. And I had an honest conversation with myself. You can't be a gym owner and a head coach and the accountant and the marketer and the cleaner and all this list. And a gym is a brick and mortar. It is a living, breathing entity, very different from an online business. So be a coach, get a whole bunch of clients. We're going to give you a bunch of people for online clients because you're getting new moms, dads, cousins all throughout the US, and you're going to build a hell of a business. But you have to really go into it knowing what you're really going to do. And if you want to be a gym manager, that's a whole different conversation for another day. But if
So
you're assuming you're a coach and you're going to do it and you have this gym and your buy-in's minimal and it's a great opportunity, try to keep the gym debt free. What kills gyms is the month of July kills gyms and the month of November kills gyms. Those are the two hardest months. And those are when winter's there and you have to be able to get through them. Overheads are high. You're going to be dealing with people who are complaining about everything. And you have to understand that vertical integration will keep your business alive. Example, apparel, supplements, water, energy drinks, Rice Krispie treats, headbands, massage, stretch. I literally have 17 lines of vertical integration in my company. But you can build out a hell of a company when you keep doing it. So it kind of goes both ways. I think there's huge potential in gyms. I actually think in the next 10 years, gyms will be the biggest thing. I think people will crave people connection. I actually think online coaches will actually do really good inside of gyms to a degree, where you could get a partnership with a gym where you brought your clients in once a month, train them in their gym, met with them. I really think people are craving a human interaction. I think
I
you're going to
think
see it take off in the next little bit again.
it's honestly the perfect segue to our conversation about in-person events. It's I like that take on it. I often tell my clients, you don't have to host an event to the caliber of, something like what you just did, right? So you had a great charity seminar, which was awesome. And I like the intimacy of it too. I think it's great because you get the opportunity to meet the speakers and meet a new friend or something. And going to an event like that by yourself is far less intimidating for coaches than walking into a conference room in a Sheraton with like 1,000 people sometimes, right? Just a different setting. So I really like that. But I always tell my coaches, hey, listen, if you've got a handful of clients in a certain city, just go there and meet up for a workout or meet up for food or something, right? Like I do think that people do crave in-person connection, right? And that's not just a Zoom call, like literally in person. And I'm always trying to work with my clients on finding ways that make sense for what they do.
Right.
But I agree with you on that. Speaking of events though, do you have any recommendations for any other events that either you've been a part of or for coaches that are listening to this, like events that you would say, hey, check this one out. This one's awesome.
Well, Health Hybrid Summit by Vince, I went to that. I thought that was good. I just actually support Vince, so I'll say that openly.
Yeah.
Because everyone supports everyone out there in different ways. I do think if I was out there looking at events, I would really look at some of the different certifications like NSCA. I'd go do that was something I did. I've always done in my coaching career. I don't ever talk about this, but I get a new cert like every year. I'll go find like just weird ones to go get. I think the biggest thing is this: if I'm looking at a seminar, where's the like-minded people going to be that I would actually want to spend my free time talking to? Because let's be honest, talking is a drain. Like especially if it's people that you don't want to be around, that's hard. So I try to identify that. And the other thing is I try to identify, and you can speak to this, non-NLP events. I don't like too many events where it's keywords and smacks and snaps and all these different highs, low, like I'm going to preach a sermon on a Sunday. I like raw, tactical, blunt. I love Arate. I think they do some really great stuff with their guests. Some of it's NLP, some of it's not, but that's where I tend to go. I'm not a big Tony Robbins guy. Events, those don't do much for me. I assume when I go to events, when I mean like-minded people, I'm looking for the great white sharks who are there because they already know that they're good and they need to be there. They're trying to be better. And that's the kind of events I look for. But I don't think you can ever go wrong with in-person events. I think it's
No,
worth spending your money. I think it's worth connecting. I think it's just finding what you're interested in, the like-minded people, and then breaking her down from there.
absolutely. I mean, I would say, any coach, like try to get to two in-person events a year, if you can,
I'll
right?
agree. Yeah.
Because I also think just getting yourself out, because being an entrepreneur, you know, it's really lonely. I mean, it just is. You know, your family doesn't really get it. They might support you, but they don't really get it. Like
True.
I love listening to my parents try to explain what I do. It's like a very fun game we like to play. I'm like, hey, can you like what do you think I do? It's fun. Like they get it, but explaining it just feels challenging.
Such a
But
thing to
it's
say
like
to that.
my stepdad is like so precious though. He like listens to my podcast and stuff. So it's really great. Like
Nice stepdad.
we love the stepdad listening to the podcast. He's great.
You
Um,
know, I talked about that in 75 hard. You bring that up. I did that the third phase. I want everybody who listens to this podcast, if you've made it this far, go to your grocery store, walk around with a cart and ask people, be like, hey, I'm a health coach. Would you like me to go through your cart and tell you what's healthy or not? You can do this. They will all say yes. And then ask them if they know what a personal trainer is. They will give you the wildest answers. Then you will understand why your content doesn't really hit. And I'll be honest, like I swear to God, they would tell me they thought we were advocate coaches, that they had to buy supplements in order to do it, like trainers with clipboards, coaches from high school that yelled at them, boot camp, military vision immediately went to their mind. Like, I mean, wild. But that lets you know what you're accounting for. I'll be honest, I think I probably could have built an entire business in 30 days with probably 50 clients by just walking through Publix every day on my lunch break.
I think it was who was it? I think it was Josh, or not Josh, John Gorman at the Hybrid Health Summit. You were in there in his presentation, and
Mhm.
John said something like, God, what was it? He was like, if you've never done this, like tell your clients that you'll literally walk them through the grocery store and
Yep.
personally pick out their groceries. And I was like,
Yep.
that is so smart for like the new coaches. Listen, if you have a roster of, you know, under 20 people, like take a few of the clients and do that, because that will get you so many referrals. Like,
Tell them to bring a friend.
yeah.
You know what you can do? Those Mother Days out groups, all those women that want breaks, they'd love to have company in a grocery store. And that's easy way that even if she couldn't buy from you, well, she probably knew 30 to 50 people who maybe could. I mean, there's so many routes. I mean, there really is. And when people tend to not think about that in business, that's another way you can identify an entrepreneur. What you're always trying to solve for a problem. Like you said, every day you wake up and you try to account for X. If you can't account for what X is, you lose.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I think all of you should go to the event next year. I'm assuming it's going to be in Q1, maybe, but I
I'm gonna
had so
keep them
much fun at it.
Q1.
Yeah, I had
I
so
want
much
to keep
fun.
them. Yeah, I want to keep them Q1 because I know most people in the summer like times to travel. And I know in the fall, people are being cognizant about their business. Our industry restricts a little bit at that time, albeit though I offer that's the time of separation season. But nonetheless, I try to do it in quarter 1 because Nashville's a cheap spot this time of year. We'll probably put the tickets up to $200 so we could double what we raise for Vanderbilt next year. But we're going to extend it to be full day Friday, full day Saturday. What we're going to do, and this is going to be the first time we're ever going to try this, we're going to try to weave the presentations that they all make actual sense the whole way through. So meaning when we chat with you, we're going to find the other people are doing stuff and try to make sure that the presentations would go in chronological order to who would feed off the best. That way people would learn in a stacked rate.
Yep. I mean, that's what we do at my conference, 100%. Just so it like flows and just to manage
100%.
energy and all of that, you know what I mean? So, anyway, I'm looking forward to that. So that'll be fun.
You
Um,
crushed it. And by the way, if no one's ever heard you present, you're really missing out. Like I saw a lot of people nod because she made sense. And the way you talked was aggressive in a way that captivated. So it was really good to hear you. You did a great job with that.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Had to earn my spot, you know. I was ready. I was
You
like,
earned your spot long ago just by being a good woman. You didn't need to do all that, but I was like, wow, she's pretty damn impressive for a speaker. So
thank you. Is there anything else that I should have asked you or what? This has been helpful and I really have enjoyed kind of our like hodgepodge of conversations, but anything else I should have asked you?
no, but I want to ask you a question.
Okay, I knew that was coming.
What is your goal for 2024 and what is your response if you don't hit your goal?
Okay. I will break that down into kind of like two different parts to that goal because I think they're important to understand. So my goal this year was to double the gross profits. However, the way we're doing that has been different than we've ever done it before. meaning instead of me just accepting anyone into my higher level of coaching, you have to go through my course first. So I've totally changed my ascension model, which means the MRR that I might be used to is going to take a bit to kind of rebuild. So we're going a very different route. And we also want to increase graduation rate significantly in Fitness Coach Academy. So we're currently like revamping curriculum, and all my coaches are flying down actually this week to do an in-person meetup and annual planning. We've never had an in-person day together, so I'm really excited for that. So I don't hit my goals every year. Like, let me just be honest with you, because I
Thank you
think
for
I'm
saying that.
so
Thank you.
fucking big that they scare the shit out of me. But that's how you set OKRs, right? So it's like, if your goal seems tangible, it's not big enough, because whatever goal I set, if I even get 70% of the way there, I'm like, nice, crushed it. So I already, not that I expect to fail, but I love shooting for something really, really big, and knowing that this year the money is such a byproduct of the impact and the graduation and the success. So I am doing everything in my power to crank out curriculum and crank out the best product that I can, and just really revamp everything. And we'll see, we're evaluating every quarter, but we'll see. Something else that I'm trying this year that I've never done is I'm taking the last week of every quarter off, like entirely off. I've never done that in my life. My mentor is like, you are going to do this. It's going to be great. What's nice about working with a mentor is he and his team are in my business when I'm off, making sure everything is good. But the whole purpose is to see, like, what is the machine we've built doing when you're gone, right? Are we still making sales? Is the team still operating effectively? And I have full confidence in my team, totally, but I've never taken a week off from my clients, right? I've taken a few days off. So simultaneously as we're doing all this, I'm really being tested with my efficiency and all of that, right? So that's the business side of the goal. The personal side of the goal is I do not want to get on a singular adrenal protocol this entire year. I want to crank harder than I ever have, while simultaneously having the best body that I've ever had at the end of this year while not competing. And so Jason is fully aware of that. And I think we're doing well so far, but hopefully that gives you some context.
No, I love it. I appreciate your transparency about saying you don't hit every goal, because I don't either. And I think that
No.
that's the goal, is to not hit the goals in a really weird way.
Yeah,
So I
right. I
appreciate
mean,
that candidness.
totally. I mean, I think that, and that's the thing too, like there's anyone listening to this, I already know that you've got other business coaches in your feed, you're looking at all this information, you're hearing all these things, and that's going to kill you at some point. It's going to kill your scale, right? Like, in my opinion, like, focus on singular resources for certain information and really hone in on that, because I know for me, I just really started unfollowing every like business guru several years ago. Like, I have no idea what my competitors are really doing. I mean, certain people I follow because of
Same.
colleagues, but like, I don't follow my competitors, because I will start to think, oh, fuck, I'm not there yet. Or, oh, I should do that. Right. I don't want any idea that comes from my brain to have had influence from looking at something else. Right.
Yes,
Same
ma'am.
when I think about content ideas. I get my content ideas after I do check-ins with my clients, right? And I'm like, oh, what was everyone struggling with? What is something silly that somebody asked me? What is a win that somebody had, right? If you find yourself like going elsewhere for creativity, going elsewhere for ideas or whatever, I'm telling you right now, you're not going to stand out, and you're gonna quickly just stay where you're at.
Yes, ma'am. 100%.
So yeah, awesome.
Nope.
So cheers to not hitting the goals, but setting really freaking scary ones. That's really the end of that. But cool. So I will link Jeff's book in the show notes and his Instagram, so you guys can go follow him and pre-order that. And Jeff, thanks for hanging out with me, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. It's great talk.